So I suppose I'm supposed to ask you, Kimbal, what is the future of food, since you're our technology guru on the stage today. But first I want to read a quote from Kim Severson. She wrote a very informative and piquant profile of you a few years ago. She writes, he wants to do for food what his brother Elon has done for electric cars and space travel. And I wonder, what does that mean?
I am wondering, as you say that, what does that mean? I think that, what I do is try to think about just a happier future. And I think my brother does as well. And when it comes to food, it matters a lot with our climate, it matters a lot with obesity and the personal tragedy of obesity, the national disaster or global disaster of obesity, the tastiness of real food compared to the Whopper conversation. I don't think I've had a Whopper in 20 years, and I don't look forward to trying it again anytime soon. So I think it's really about a happier future, and I think that's one where my brother and I, we both had a big success when we were young. And when you aren't really thinking about financial return, you do a lot of stupid things, like open restaurants and build rocket companies and work in farming and all these things that are meant to, you make a small fortune. You start with a large fortune, and then you end up with a small fortune working in these businesses. But for us, it's what drives us, and it's just about keeping in tune with, are we helping the world be a better place?
So you are taking a multi-pronged approach to solving some food problems, and we will determine what those problems are in a second. But you own a group of restaurants under the umbrella of The Kitchen, and you're a big supporter of local farms through the sourcing that you do. You have Big Green, which is a pervasive, how would you describe it, outdoor learning gardens?
Yeah.
Like the,
outdoor classrooms that are edible schoolyards.
Edible schoolyard, but not the edible schoolyard.
Not the edible schoolyard, exactly.
And then there is Square Roots, which is a farming model that is all built around container farming. So you have kind of this trifecta. What I wanted to ask you before we get into the specifics of what you're actually doing with each of these businesses is what problem or problems are you trying to solve? These are all problem-solving solutions. What have you identified as the most pressing issues, and how are these initiatives tackling those issues?
Sure, yeah. It started with The Kitchen. For me, I grew up, I was cooking for my family since I was 12 years old. You imagine a very, very busy and intense family. And if other people cooked, no one would sit down. We'd just pick at the food and get on with our day. But if I cooked, my mom would be like, okay, everyone, we're going to sit down and we're going to have a meal. And we would learn about what was going on with each other. And that really stuck with me. And I went to New York after I sold my first company and trained at the French Culinary Institute, which is now called the ICC, I think. A wonderful school. But it's still, I wasn't thinking I would do food as a career. But I got this traumatic but amazing experience to cook for the firefighters in 9/11. And what I saw with the firefighters was, they'd come in from these giant piles of melting metal, and we would feed them. I was very lucky. I was a junior chef, but the chefs we worked with were the best chefs in the world, coming in from all over the place to volunteer, serving them the best food they've ever had, real food, cooked that day, cooked that hour. And they would just come to life, and they would connect with each other, and it would be this 30 minutes of not being out there, but the food really made it all possible. And then they would go right back out into these giant piles of melting metal, still melting, weeks after 9/11, to save American lives. And for me, it was like, wow, if I could do that with food, I kind of decided I just have to try and do a restaurant. And so we created The Kitchen, and it's a community restaurant in Boulder. And we just found that the tastier food was from our local farmers. It wasn't that complicated. Back in those days, there was no ability, or very hard to get farmers to deliver. They were farmers market or wholesale, and we would get to know them and ask them if they would deliver. And so it it was this sense of community that we wanted to create, this connecting with each other, taking a break from your day and connecting with your loved ones or your family or making friends. We've had hundreds of people propose in our restaurants. I mean, that is one of the most beautiful things to see. Is one example of I was manning the restaurant, and this guy comes and says, in 15 minutes, I'm going to propose to my wife. And I said, that's great. I will give you a nice table. And now he had a reservation. He's like, no, I want to come in and sing to her and play an instrument. Do you mind if the restaurant takes a 5-minute break while he sings to it? And I'm like, okay. I mean, I can't really say no at that point. So then his girlfriend shows up, and he doesn't show up. For like 10 minutes, and this girlfriend is, we're doing everything we can, sending her some champagne. Don't leave. And from the back walks in, there's the guy with a marching band of like 20 people. And this is like loud. And our restaurant is pretty small. And he proposes. And it's just one of the most beautiful things to have a community space like that that serves real food that people trust from local farmers. And so that's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question, the problem we were solving.
I'll guide you toward what comes next. So how did you go from having a successful chain of restaurants to, let's talk about the Square Roots farming model. You're erecting container farms in cities around the country, and you have big plans. And I'd like you to just tell the audience what is the Square Roots farming model? Yeah, I mean, that comes back to a very important problem that we're all trying to solve today, which is where are the young farmers? And when I started exploring this idea, indoor farming was not even in my thinking. All of our suppliers are outdoor soil farmers. And I would go to Iowa, which is where the heart of farmers are, and you go to these conferences, and they say the average age is 58 or 59. The average age in these conferences is more like 82. Like, they are old. And I mean it nicely, love old people, nothing against that. But they don't innovate, and they aren't even interested in innovating. And Mark mentioned earlier the ethanol mandate, which is absolutely correct. These farmers get paid to farm ethanol. They don't get paid much. If you have a 100-acre farm, in a good year, you'll make $22,000. The past 2 years, you lose $1,800 per 100 acres. This has been a terrible 2 years for farmers. We've had more bankruptcies this year since the Great Recession in 2008, 2009. 600 farmers declared bankruptcy, and it's just awful. I mean, the structure that's in place to prevent young farmers from getting land is absolutely terrible. And an ethanol mandate is one of those things that keeps older farmers just farming the same old thing because that's what the government is basically subsidizing them to do. So I tried to buy some land. I was like, you know what I'll do is I'll go get 10,000 acres of land, and I'll split it up into 100 acres each, and we'd locate it close to a major city, and my thinking was Chicago, and I would get 100 farmers, each to farm 100 acres, and we would create instant supply for really good, delicious, soil-grown food. And how did that go?
It was simply not possible. What I learned is you can only buy land through estate sales, so you have to go to these estate sales where you buy a piece of land from someone that's passed away in an auction because their kids don't want it. But if you try to buy it while they're still alive, it's so emotional for them that they won't sell it to you. And so I was just kind of stuck. It's like, I don't really want to go to estate sales. That sounds super depressing. So I was like, okay, how do I do this in another way? And so I learned about indoor farming and did my best to understand the technology. And there were some fundamental changes that happened around 2014, which wasn't about making the food cheaper. It was actually about making the food taste good. Indoor farming for the past 100 years has been about making food, but it doesn't really taste very good. It's using sodium light bulbs. The food is kind of watery. There's no real depth and texture to it. And so it was always kind of written off. I was like, I'm not going to go near that. And in 2014, the young companies, and now they've been acquired by Philips and others, started to create these lighting systems that could convert energy into light. in a way that you could actually fine-tune it to the actual plant and create a tastier, more delicious product than you can grow in the soil. And we grow basil in New York, and absolutely for the month of June, the local farmers in New York, they kick our ass. I mean, that's just an amazing time to grow basil in New York, or upstate New York. But for the rest of the year, we are the best product by far. And
how many of these container farms do you currently have up and running and actually selling and providing produce around the country?
We have 20. So the program is all about young farmers. So what I wanted to do was to solve this problem of how do we get more young farmers into the world. Soil or indoor didn't matter to me. I just wanted more farmers. And so what we created is a business model where a farmer comes on for 1 year and they get paid, including benefits, around $45,000 or so in New York. They're in Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy. This is a inexpensive place to live. But we hope. But the point is that same farmer, if they went to get 100 acres in upstate New York, it would cost them, if my math is correct, about $100,000, and they would lose $1,800 a year. So the point is not that we're trying to solve the economic situation for young farmers. It's that for 1 year, they can learn how to be a farmer, get paid a wage that they are very happy to accept. But it's not about that. It's about what they do after they graduate. So we have 40 farmers in our program. 23 have graduated. 17 of them are still in agriculture. One of our guys, Daniel, he's now an associate farmer. He trains farmers. He graduated from our program, now trains farmers. Before that, he was with Green City Force, which is a way to take you guys, exactly. And it's a wonderful program that takes young adults without jobs and trains them how to work in the green workforce, of the environmental workforce, or the farming workforce. And Daniel's just been a phenomenal member of our team. We also have one of our guys he works now for Teens for Food Justice up in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. Another one, great. So, I mean, what we're doing with these kids is we're training them to be in the food and love it. We have one of our folks up at Stone Barns. He got recruited by Stone Barns 9 months into the program, and the program is a full year, but we were so happy for him, because now he got his dream job, and he wouldn't have got that without learning basic farming.
It sounds like you're offering kind of an incubator for people who want to start taking steps toward farming. What would you say to people who think that you're trying to disrupt traditional agriculture?
I would love to disrupt traditional agriculture, because it sucks. That would be great.
All right. So what's your dream scenario? Lay it out for us.
Well, I mean, so the food we grow is not what traditional agriculture grows. Traditional agriculture, 99.999999% of it is corn and soybeans. Because of things like the ethanol mandate and crop insurance subsidies, that is not going to change anytime soon. People simply will not get access to land unless they have an extraordinary amount of money and patience. So what we want to do is we want to go into cities like Chicago, Detroit, Seattle, for sure in the upper weather system, the northern climates, Boston, Toronto, and we want to do indoor farming with young farmers. We in each city we would do 25 farmers at a time. So each year, 25 farmers go through the system. 25 we call them climate farms. So these are old shipping containers we convert into climate-controlled environments, so we can replicate an environment. We found that the best basil in the world is grown in Genoa, Italy, and that is actually where basil is from, so that makes sense. But we found that in the best time of the year, it's an 18-hour day of sunlight. It's 78 degrees. It's got a particular humidity level and a carbon dioxide level. It rains on this amount of time. You can actually recreate that climate. So our basil is grown in our climate farms, where we replicate the summer of 1997, not any summer, but the best summer, which is 1997 in Genoa, Italy, to create the best basil that you've ever tasted. grown by a kid who's 18 to 24 years old that will learn a love of food, and we've seen most of them stay in food in some form.
So you're selling the basil retail in the New York market.
Yep.
On one of the previous panels, there was the issue that was raised of vegetables and fruit just being affordable. Is there anything about the container shipping farm model that addresses the issue of affordability and accessibility?
Yeah, I think that we will get to, so what's wonderful about technology is we will get there. Right now, if you guys are familiar with Tesla, we're at the Roadster level, which is a very cool, but maybe not the most practical car you'd buy. But it gives you the basis to build on technology, so you can eventually do the Model X, and then the Model X, and now the Model 3, and more to come. But it makes it more affordable over time. But the key to understand is that this has now moved from a traditional farming problem to a technology opportunity. So the more you invest in the technology, the more you can easily convert energy into light. The better the lights are, the better the food tastes, the more nutrition you can derive. You can literally change the nutrition level in a strawberry, more vitamin C, more vitamin D. I'd like it to be a little sweeter, but same seed, because you can actually influence using climate. And that's very important. Going from farming has always been a very challenging industry. Even if you love it, it's still challenging. Now it's a technology opportunity, and to be honest, I left technology as an industry 20 years ago. I don't consider myself a technologist. But Square Roots was now, wow, okay, I could apply technology to food, and it's in a good way. So the food is tastier, it's more nutritious, it's local, it's not shipped, it empowers young farmers. Okay, time to employ some technology.
Let me ask you about that idea of localism when it comes to the Square Roots farming model, because it's technically local because you are close to where the food is growing, and you're definitely having much more optimal, transportation.
I think the furthest we go is 2 subway stops.
But I wonder, when people talk about food and the notion of terroir, you're saying, Genoa is where basil's from, and it's an expression of that place. Is that a notion that gets lost when you are farming not in the actual soil of the place, but reproducing conditions wherever it is you happen to be and growing whatever it is you want to grow in this more isolated aspect? Yeah,
I do think that terroir is beautiful. And like I said, the best basil in New York is going to be in the month of June, and it's just phenomenal. It's a light texture. The sun is not as hot, and it's a beautiful, the best time to get basil, and it is fantastic. But the rest of the year, we're shipping it in from places as far away as China. I mean, it is so stupid that we do this. It certainly doesn't taste good, but why are we shipping food when we can grow it locally? If you go to the state of Indiana, which is a breadbasket state, 97% of the food grown in Indiana is not eaten in Indiana, so they actually ship in food from around the world when they could be growing it locally. And so for me, local is about empowering the community, it's about empowering farmers, it's about being better for the environment, being more connected to your community, it's about more nutritious food, it's about trusting your food. I mean, local, if you get food grown locally, there's trust to that. As long as there's a farmer associated with it and you really believe, and there truly is trust there. And I think that indoor farmers really need to own that and really deliver on trust, which we do. We work very hard at Square Roots. We have a transparency timeline where you can literally just see when the seed was planted, who planted it, when was it harvested, what time of day was it harvested, which day was it, with pictures of the farmers. I mean, it's really about building trust with the consumer, because people have lost trust in the food system. So for me, local has been a big part of what I've seen as being better from a taste perspective, nutrition perspective, and helping the farmers. And so I think it's important that we are able to do local all year long. And for that short period of time where the terroir really is better, absolutely, that's when it should win out.
And we are out of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Oh, hold on, one more thing. Plant a Seed Day is the first day of spring next year. And our goal is to get every teacher in America to pledge to plant a vegetable seed with their kids. So spread the word. First day of spring, March 19th, 2020. Thank you, guys.